Hello everyone. So in this video we are going to discuss LeetCode problem 136 single number. So let's see what problem statement says. So we'll be given a non-empty array of integer nums. Every element appears twice except for the one element. We need to find that single element which is occurring only once. Okay. So let's see an example. So in first example you can see we are given an array where numbers are 2, 2 and 1. We can clearly see 2 is repeating, so the occurrence of 2 is twice and 1 is only occurring one time. So that means 1 is the single element or number. In the second example we can see the array is given as 4, 1, 2, 1, 2. So we can clearly see 1 is occurring twice, 2 is also occurring twice, but only 4 is occurring once. That means 4 is the single number. Okay. So let's see a brute force approach to solve this problem. The brute force approach which we can think is using nested loops. That is, we'll be using two loops, we'll be traversing through the array, and then we will find the count of the occurrence of each element, and at the last, if we will return an element whose occurrence is once, that is the single element. But this is not the good approach because the time complexity will be big of n square as we are using nested loops, and space complexity will be big of 1 because we are not using any extra space. But we can find better way to solve this problem. The next way is, it is also a brute force approach, but it is better than using nested loops, that is using maps. Okay, so we can use a map data structure int comma int to store the frequency of the each element. We will iterate through the array and update the count of each element in that map. Okay, and once we have the count of each element, then we will again iterate through the map and then find the element that appears only once, that is the single element, and then we will return that element. Okay, so let's see a graphical understanding how this approach works. Okay, so first step is we will iterate through an array. So the first element is 4, so we will store that element 4, and what is the count? Initially the count of each and every element will be one only. Okay, so in the first iteration, the first element is 4, the count of that element is 1. Okay, we'll move forward, next element is 1, again the count will be 1 because it has occurred only first time. Now the next element is 2, again the count will be 1 because it has occurred only first time. But as we move forward, the next element is 1, and we already have 1 stored in our map, but its count was 1. Now 1 has occurred one more time, so the count of the element 1 will now be changed to 2. That means 1 has occurred twice, that means there is one more occurrence. Okay, now again we'll move forward, the next element is 2. Okay, now again 2 is already stored in our map, but its count was 1. Now we occurred or encountered one more 2 in the array. Now again the count of element 2 will be changed to 2 from 1. Okay, so the final map will look like 4 has occurred 1, 1 has occurred twice, 2 has occurred twice. Okay, now we will iterate through the map to check and find out the element whose count is 1, that is the single element. Clearly we can see we will return the element 4 because 4 is the only element whose count is 1. Okay, so now let's discuss the time and space complexity. So time complexity will be big of n because we will be iterating through an array and iterating through an map, so it will be big of n. But the space complexity in this case will be big of n because we are using an extra space for storing the counts, that is the frequency of each element. Okay, so now let's just discuss the code of this thing. Okay, so we will declare a unordered map, and then for storing the frequency we will iterate through an array, and then we will do frequency of num plus plus, and in that frequency map we will be storing the frequency. Then again we will be iterating through the map and we will be checking this count. Whenever we get the count as 1, then we will return the first part of that map, that is the element. Okay, so now let's jump into the optimal solution, how we can solve this problem using optimal way. So optimal solution is using a XOR. Okay, so let's just understand XOR properties before moving into the solution. Okay, so whenever we do a XOR of same number, then the numbers will cancel out. That means A XOR A will return 0 because they will cancel out each other. And second property is, if we do a XOR with any element, let's say A XOR 0, then we will get the same element A as it is. Okay. Now, how can we use this in our problem statement? Since all the number except 1 appears twice, XORing all the elements will cancel out each of the duplicate element, and we will be left with the only single number. Okay. Now, let's look at the algorithm. Initially, we will initialize variable as result as 0. Then we will iterate through the array, and then we will do XOR of each and every element with this result. Okay, now the final value of the result is the single number itself. For example, now let's look at the visual representation of solving this problem. So we will be given an examples, let's say 4 1 2 1 2. Okay, so we will do XOR of each and every element, but we can rewrite the same thing in this way. That means we can club same elements together. So we will bring 2 1 together. Okay, and same way we will bring 2 2 together. Okay, now 1 XOR 1, that means same element, they will cancel out, it will result in 0. Same way 2 XOR 2, it will cancel out and it will return 0. Now we will use the second property of XOR operation, that is, when we XOR any element with 0, we will get the element itself. So 4 XOR 0 XOR 0 will return 4. So this is the single element which is there in the array. Okay, so now let's understand the time and space complexity. So the time complexity will be big of n because we will be doing a single pass only, and space complexity will be big of 1 because we are not using extra space to store anything. Okay, so let's just look at the code part of it. So initially we will initialize a variable, let's say answer as 0. Then we will iterate through the array, and then we will do a XOR with each and every element of that array, and at the end we will return that answer, which is the XOR of all the elements. So in this way we will find out the single element of that array. Thanks for watching the video.